and welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show. The show where we talk about all the crazy, stupid stuff that happens in marketing and helps people find a better, different, dare I say, more authentic way of doing marketing instead. And so, on that note, we have new insights that we bring into the marketing conversation every week. Some of them are very marketing-y. Some are a little bit more businessy, and that's what we're doing today. Is we're talking about business psychology. And I always feel like when we're talking about psychology, we're talking about humans. I feel like a lot of times when we are talking about marketing, we forget that there are humans both on the creative side and on the consuming side of marketing. So I'm really excited to explore this business psychology perspective with Dr. Shannon Jennings today, and figure out some ways how we can take those learnings and bring them into our marketing strategies. So if you are joining us for the first time, please let us know that you are here. There's this fancy little comments feature. So wherever you're watching, there's an opportunity for you to comment. And we would love to hear your perspectives on this conversation as well. Not just a conversation for two of us, a conversation for all of us. So come and share your perspectives, your insights, your questions. If you happen to be a business psychologist yourself, share some of your expert knowledge. We would love to hear that. Hi, Andrew. Andrew, welcome to the show. Andrew is a friend of the show. Nice to see you always, my friend. Let us know that you're here and ask your questions, because what I endeavor to create in this space is a place where we can explore with our ideas, and questions are a great way to do that. And there's no stupid questions here, friends. So if you're like, oh, but I don't want to answer this because I am not a business psychologist, I'm not a marketer, that's the point. This is the point. Ask your questions, because your questions gives insight for everybody, including the two of us. So please ask your questions. Alexandra, thanks for joining us. Happy to see you here. And Alexandra might have questions about business psychology. She's doing some very cool stuff in the mental health arena. So ask your questions, folks. They can be specific to your business, general questions. Go to town, whatever can be helpful for you. So before we jump into the conversation today, let's learn a little bit more about Dr. Shannon. Dr. Shannon, can you share with us a little sneak peek of who you are and what led you into the arena of business psychology?
Well, like many people in consulting psychology, I came here through a unique path. Early in my career, I started off as a licensed mental health counselor. I'm actually the daughter of two therapists. My dad opened the first clinical practice in the area where we live in northern Indiana, and is the inventor of a game called the self-esteem game. So I sort of naturally fell into the idea of mental health. And with that came running a practice. There's a business that's involved with any sort of medical practice. And I realized as I was working within mental health that I also loved the business side of running the business, right? The operations, the negotiating with stakeholders, the marketing to bring in new people. And I sort of moved along that path, just kind of doing the business, being a mental health counselor. I did a lot of public speaking at the time. And that brought me into a field that I was new to, the field of entrepreneurship. I joined an organization in the early 2000s called the Edward Lowe Foundation. Now, some of you may know who Edward Lowe was. Most of you probably don't, but you all know his product. Ed Lowe was the inventor of kitty litter. He used to say, if you can make millions of dollars selling dirt in a bag, the free enterprise system is a pretty good system. And Ed was a brilliant marketer when it came to, in my opinion, when it came to kitty litter. I mean, when you think of cat litter, right, you think of kitty litter. Kitty litter is a brand name. It's a cat box filler or something is its official name. And there's where I really absolutely fell in love with the world of entrepreneurship and small business owners and the challenges that they face on a daily basis, with whether it's within their organization, with their team, their people, or going to market and communicating their value proposition and getting customers in the door and sending them away happy. I just like, oh, this is what I really want to do. I went and I got my doctorate degree in business psychology, which is a type of like IO, organizational leadership psychology, that combines what you might expect a PhD in psychology to learn, but also business classes like business and financial literacy and marketing. And so I use that now to work with small business owners, mostly under 500 employees. I work with them within their organizations and help them develop strategy, family business plans, things like that. Um, and I'm always looking for something new. So who knows? I might be reinvented and doing something else next year. But for now,
This
that's what I'm doing.
this is a great point that you start off making, though, Dr. Shannon, because I think, like, in marketing, a lot of people talk about the target audience, right? And their target audience is this, and it's got this demographic and this like look and this feel and this personality and all of these things. But what you demonstrated through your introduction was that people change, right?
Yeah.
People change, people evolve. Because brands are built on people, brands change and brands evolve. So, from a psychology perspective, what are we looking at from this like evolutionary perspective? How does that play into the conversation when we're talking about psychology?
Sure. Well, I mean, as you know, right, we are always growing and changing. I spent a lot of time around my grandchild, right, who's going to be 3 years old this weekend, and who she is today is very different than who she was even just a year ago today. And as we grow into our adulthood, we change. Our companies grow and change. One of the things I look at with companies is particularly those smaller firms is they follow a developmental path that's a lot like your a human developmental path, right? So they grow and they change, and how they do marketing grows and change. If you're a startup, and you're getting out there, and it might just be you or you and one dedicated first follower, right? Who goes out there and you are the marketing team, and it's really just you showing up and talking to people and maybe a business card. But there's not much strategy around it. There's not a lot of because you're just trying to get your first customers in the door, right? But once you start building that momentum, now everything you do starts to like build precedent. It builds a history. It starts to, well, this is the way we do it. And sometimes those things carry into the next stages of a company and or an organization. It can be nonprofit as well. So you're doing some of the activities and you're doing things that might have worked for the entrepreneur in the early stage, but no longer fit with who your brand is now. Maybe that's because the entrepreneur themselves has evolved. Maybe they're no longer leading the company. But it's still oftentimes based on sort of their personal authentic self, authenticism, if that's a word, right?
Let's
And
make it one.
so how do you communicate? Like if I'm a for Syncovate, that's my company. It's the brand is pretty authentic to me because it's just me, right? But as I grow, that's going to change because I'm bringing in other people and their authentic selves into that mix. And I guess the challenge is how do you incorporate all those individuals into it in a way that continues to have an authentic core for your whatever the problem is. I tend to think about it in terms of what's the problem you're trying to solve. I don't think as much in terms of ideal customer like marketers do very much. That's always a shift for me. I tend to think about what are the problems that people are trying to solve? What are the things that they're trying to improve in their lives? What are the things that they're trying to eliminate in their lives? And how can we help them do that? And so if that's going to shift and change, then your ideal customer is probably going to shift and change. So again, I don't necessarily think like a marketer, but I do know that humans are always growing and changing, and what appeals to them in one moment in time may not appeal later on. Like if I keep getting pacifier advertisements now that my granddaughter is 3, right? That doesn't resonate with me anymore. But boy, did the algorithm know exactly when to deliver those into my social feed to make sure that I was aware, oh, there's new stuff on the market. Um, so anyway, I might have rambled off on your question there, Tracy. Sorry about that.
No, this is the show where the rambling is where all the good stuff is. Because
Ramble on.
this is the thing, folks, is that this is when we speak and we're in conversation, we have the opportunity to develop our thoughts. So a lot of the times, like that question that I asked Shannon was not an easy question. It was not pre-prepared. None of my guests get any heads up on what questions I'm asking them, by the way. They all agree to just go with it. This is where we get to explore, and this is one of the things we don't take enough time to do, whether you're thinking about it from a business building perspective or a marketing perspective or a building a relationship with your grandkids perspective. We don't take enough time to explore our ideas through thoughts. So this is why I also encourage you guys to get into the conversation, because it allows you to explore your ideas. And there's no, I mean, I feel like, especially when it comes to psychology, there's facts, but for our own experiences, there's no global right or wrong. There's no global, if Tracy experiences it, then Dr. Shannon is going to experience it the exact same way. So
No,
we
in
explore and
fact,
we
there's
figure out, like,
evidence,
what would we
Tracy,
do?
right? Some of the most fascinating evidence is in the area of eyewitness testimony, right? You would think that, and they've run experiments on this. You guys can go look it up. I won't give you the exact reference, but they'll send folks out and they'll like in a classroom, it's a experimental setup. Someone will come in and grab a purse, and run out the door. And then they'll ask the people in the room, what did you see? What did they look like? We would think that everybody in the room would describe that experience the same way. And yet we know over and over again, people do not see the same thing. And the back of my head, there's some pretty funny like discrepancies in the way people come up with their answers. It's not funny though if that's a real life situation and we're looking to identify something that happened. And so often what we find in the world is that because we have these different points of view, because we saw different things happening even though we were in the same room, we end up with these different perspectives, these different ways of understanding what just happened, different emotional content around what just happened. And so even when it's really obvious, we can still find disagreement. And we can find ourselves sometimes locked into trying to prove to the other one that, no, what I saw was correct. And I think this happens often in marketing, right? Like when any piece comes across your domain, whether it's through your social, on a print ad, whatever it is, you experience it where you're at, right? And where you're at can have lots of different variables to it. It can be your emotional content. It can be how you feel physically. Are you tired? Are you hungry? Are you well fed? Are you feeling oxytocin because you just had a big hug from someone you love, right? And how marketing hits you in those moments can actually be quite different. How any messaging, really, any type of communication can hit you in those moments very much differs. And yet, we still, even though we know that intuitively, I think most of us are like, yeah, of course that's true. If you ask me to do something when I'm tired and cranky, and our kids know it, right? I hate to go back to kids, but our kids know it. They know by like 2. It's a good time to ask mom for some screen time, or it's not a good time. Like mom's busy at work, she's a little distracted. It's perfect time to ask for screen time. And they know it because you're probably going to say yes to, hey mom, I really want you to play with me, or you could let me have some screen time. They figure that out pretty young, right? And so these are intuitive things, and yet we still find ourselves not always thinking them through when we're coming up with sort of plans and expectations about how we think things are going to roll out. So that's just kind of one of the things to be aware of is when it comes to different experiences, even ourselves can have a different experience than ourselves 10 minutes ago. How do we expect the experience to be totally the same for other individuals who have a totally different internal context than we do? Which doesn't make the marketing job easier by any means to recognize that, but just to say that sometimes it's not everything is going to be right for everybody. And
Right.
there's a bit of a numbers game, right? In terms of being willing to take some risks and put some things out there and do some things that might not resonate with everybody. And sometimes you put the thing out there and you're like, holy moly, let's build on that. This is actually resonating with people. I didn't know it would, but let's shift our resources and think about what that thing is because it's getting some attention out there instead of getting locked into what we think is supposed to happen. Let's get that data and make decisions on that. So.
Well, and I think I'm sure there's a psychological principle out here too, Dr. Shannon, is that like what this desire to not be wrong. If I
Yeah.
put something out there and it's going to be associated with my brand, I don't want it to feel wrong. And so people
Yep.
put a lot of time, effort, and energy into creating these things, while simultaneously, marketing in particular is very much an industry of guess and test. Okay?
Hmm.
Because I can't know for sure what any one of my clients is thinking at any given time, unless I'm doing one to one. But even in one to one, somebody who would respond positively one day can respond negatively the next day because of a personal situation, and I don't control their personal situation. And so, well, I'm balancing this belief that marketing is about exploring and experimenting, and in so doing, that I will eventually get something wrong. There's also this desire not to get it wrong. It's our
Yeah.
desire to create our digital ad for the first time with the perfect creative, the perfect landing page, the perfect call to action, the perfect targeting, right? Like, and then when you say it that way, you're like, well, the likelihood of that is like
It's
almost non-existent.
overwhelming. That's a
Except we
lot.
still put the
Mhm.
pressure on that. So how does that, like, fear of being wrong or fear of failure play into some of the decisions we make from a business psychology perspective?
Mhm. Well, we know that fear, just in general, because of the like soup of hormones that it creates, fear and anxiety are a real damper to creativity and authenticity and human connection. And so, while you want to have a certain level of, the term in psychology uses a certain level of arousal, right? So there needs to be a little bit of agita there to get folks moving. But if you go too high on the fear level, right, you're going to end up with uh, just a lack of creativity and a lack of innovation, because that's what happens to us naturally within our brains. Knowing that, though, how do you go forward, right? Knowing that that's going to be one of the challenges that we face. Um, uh, I guess I also think about this discovery from behavioral economics, which found that we are more averse to losses than we are seeking gains, right? So we want to avoid losses more powerfully than we want to seek gains. And so I think that's an important thing to remember in lots of different ways, whether that's how how you're positioning things to whatever it is you're trying to market, because there's some loss of money potentially, right? If I'm giving you money in exchange for your goods or services, what am I going to get in return for that? There's always some fear that that exchange is going to, you're going to end up on the losing end of that exchange, right? So that's part of marketing's job, I think, maybe, is to help people get over that fear. But also in terms of when you're developing, it's especially for small enterprises, when you're developing that brand personality, when you're developing how you go out there and express your authentic self as a business, um, that fear of loss is also paralyzing for many early stage entrepreneurs. And so they don't go. They don't take the invite to go on the live stream. They don't go on the podcast. They don't get on the panel because they don't want to say something that makes them look stupid or brings on the backlash from social media or whatever it might, or, do something that ends up losing some of their market share. Um, that can create a paralysis in that I've seen in small business owners who have a lot to share and could be incredibly powerful voices for marketing and sales within their firm, but they're not doing it because of their own personal fear. And just kind of a little tangent. I'm also some people like to use the word imposter syndrome. And again, I'm not on a mission to stop other people from using the term imposter syndrome. You go forth and use as you will. But I'm trying to change that language within myself, because what I found was, and I think others have found this too, the language of imposter syndrome is often used in conjunction with women or people who are from historically marginalized communities, right? You don't as often hear sort of people from power saying, I have imposter syndrome, right? They might say, I have some self doubt, or I'm questioning, or I need to check this out. But that language of imposter syndrome, I think, in and of itself, is powerful and creates an expectation. So I'm trying to like exit from my vocabulary and instead use things like, I am out of touch with what's authentic. right? Or I am unsure about myself. I'm having doubt. I'm having head trash. I'm having internal dialogue that is not helping me feel confident in this situation. There are lots of ways in which to talk about what we label as imposter syndrome without making it a syndrome and a condition that people feel. That's fun to use. Don't get me wrong. If you want to use it in fun, again, I'm not trying to change anybody else's vocabulary.
Just so you
But
know,
for
Dr.
me,
Shannon, I am on your team of not using imposter syndrome, just in case you're trying to like defend against my desire to use it. My belief is that so long as you are not being yourself and trying to be someone else, you will feel like an imposter.
right,
So then
which is not a
we're
syndrome, that's a behavioral act
right.
and the natural thing that follows after it, right?
Yeah.
So, and
You did
we all
that,
are gonna
and
have
you don't have
we
to
all
do
are
that.
gonna probably have moments where we're not entirely authentic, right? Like that's fine. There are moments where it's like I am just playing a role to get through this situation and because that's what's appropriate. But if you are trying to step out and put on that mask and play that role all the time, that's pretty exhausting. And that's something I see as a therapist. So I don't do very much work as a therapist anymore, but I have practiced as a mental health counselor for more years than I will say, because it'll date me. Um, long enough that when I was doing insurance forms, they were on paper and filled out by hand. So that gives you some sense of timeline there. And one of the things that I encounter over and over again as a therapist is people who struggle with feeling as if others will accept their authentic self, right? And so they go out into the world and they put on this mask and they act as if the ways they think that people expect them to act. And then over and over again, they they get to the point in a relationship where they have this fear that the other person is going to discover who they really are and they're not going to really like them, whether that's a romantic relationship or friendship or even a work relationship. And so now you're in this terrified state of trying to be what everybody else wants you to be in order to keep that going. And you can see where that's going to lead to a sense of not liking oneself, not believing in oneself. And they come into counseling feeling like, maybe other people don't like them, they have very low self esteem. And largely, what the work that we do is uncovering who their authentic self is underneath all that bullshit that they've learned over the years and that they've covered themselves up with over the years. Sorry if I offended anybody out there with the language, but that's what it is to me. And so, it's not glamorous, but some of that work is digging out of the shit, and getting to who the person really is. And then then it's like encouraging and helping them run small experiments, go out in small ways and be who they really are. Test it out with the people that they want to, that they trust, that they feel good with. Test it out with me. And what you find over and over and over again is as they start to uncover this person and take it out there into the world, they get all this positive feedback from other people. You seem happy, you seem lighter, you seem like you like me better. Um, and that's like very self reinforcing then. So when I saw some of your stuff around authenticity and being who you are and sort of just shamelessly being who you are, uh, that really stood out to me as an incredibly healthy way of approaching the world, approaching marketing, because to me, it's one of the biggest differences between people who go about the world in a manner of having healthy relationships and those who really struggle with it is bringing their true authentic self to those relationships. Um, so I was even just reading a thread the other day that came across one of my socials. I didn't read the article, but the title was, woman married for 25 years finds out she doesn't know who husband is. It's like, well, there you go. That's what I'm talking about.
I mean, the thing that I always find interesting is you can put the same amount of effort into being someone else, or usually it's more effort into being someone
Oh,
else
way
than
more.
it is to being yourself, and people choose that, like that,
Mhm.
from that husband's perspective, right? Even if, let's just say, the wife wasn't trying very hard to like dig into it, okay, but still, for 25 years that person actively hid who they
Mhm.
are from somebody that they have very close proximity to
Yeah,
on a very consistent basis, that is a lot of work. And I always say the professional actors get paid what they do because it is hard to act
yeah,
like that all the time, right? You
yeah,
are never being your real self. You are always acting like a character.
yeah.
And from a,
It's
I,
exhausting, but
yeah,
it starts so early,
it's
okay?
true.
I
And
mean,
it
think
just
of it.
becomes like the habit, right?
It becomes the habit. There's a book out there called The Voice of Knowledge, and it lays this out much more beautifully than I do, and I believe it's Don McGill Ruiz, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, who's the author of that book. And it lays it out. The Four Agreements is also a more well-known book that he wrote, and it describes this phenomenon incredibly beautifully. But I'll do it in my sort of stark tones. So imagine, you're going about the world and you're 1 years old, right? You're going about and you're just doing your thing. You're all egocentric and you're just happy. You love everybody, everybody loves you, everything revolves around you, and you're just cruising. You don't know how to be anybody but yourself, right? You are just you. Doesn't matter if you're a girl and you like dinosaurs or you're a boy, you are you. And then somewhere along the line, you start getting messaging that says you are not good enough just how you are, right? Maybe you're the little girl who wears the dinosaur t-shirt and somebody says, "Oh, don't you want the pink one?" Right? Maybe it's a criticism that comes on how you throw your food on the floor. Maybe, it's you get called a name when you start to lose your temper and get emotional and throw yourself on the floor. I mean, we do it in the smallest ways, in the nicknames, in the things that we say, not even thinking about it, that our little brains absorb. And we start to get this message from the world by the time we are 3, 4 years old that we have to conform to this idea of what other people want us to be. And I think that's profound. I think that that stays with us into our adulthood in ways that we don't always recognize. Sorry about the dogs if you guys hear those. Of course, they were quiet all day. Then we go live and boom, now they're barking. That's
They
the way it
know
is.
the pets, they
They know.
know.
That's I knew it was coming. I was prepared. But yeah, so imagine how profoundly that affects us when it starts, and even the best parents, even the most educated, well-meaning, giving, get down on one knee, talk at your level parents will start to send these messages in an effort to shape behavior and, have kids be socially appropriate. And so it sticks with us, right? And so some of what we need to do, I think, as adults is a little bit of deprogramming, a little bit of going back over those things. And one of the things you asked me about in the beginning was growth. And so to me, part of that is doing the work to check back in on yourself on a regular basis. Whether that's an annual thing that you do, whether it's a daily thing that you journal. I'm not here to prescribe exactly how you do it, but find ways to check back in with who you are and what you're doing. And it needs to be kind of quiet. It's very difficult to check in with yourself when you're in the middle of a bunch of frantic stuff going on, right? And it can be in a quiet moment with your coffee cup or a cup of tea. Doesn't have to be, on the beach in Aruba. But find the moments to check in with your authentic self. Check in with your body, right? How does this feel? Check your heart, check your gut, check your head. Do you know where you carry your stress? Do you know where you carry fear? Do you know where you carry love? The more aware you can be of yourself, the more likely you are to be able to be authentic in relation with others. Because I truly think that oftentimes when people are inauthentic, when they are performing at an imposter level, it's not even because they're doing it on purpose. It's so automatic and so ingrained and so much something we've been used to doing that it just happens. And the effort is in the other direction. The effort is in finding who that person is and what really makes you tick, what really makes you happy, what makes your body feel good, full of oxytocin and happy chemicals and not downer chemicals, right? But unless you check it out with yourself, you don't know and you're just guessing. Um, so
And I think
anyway.
I love that. So if you're just tuning in, you might be like, this sounds like a very individual human conversation that we're having here. But what we forget as marketers or business people or parents or whatever the other identities that we have is that this is not, it doesn't turn off at the door. I remember this is maybe 2 years ago now, but I saw an HR professional post on LinkedIn that you have to leave your emotions at the door. You have to just come to work and do your job. And I was like, it's just not that simple because it's not like I come to work and I take my jacket off and I leave my jacket at the door, right? Like it's
Mhm.
how I'm feeling, it affects my body. And like you were talking about, if you carry stress in certain parts of your body, you bring that. And while you
Mhm.
might be trying to logic your way out of that or to prioritize your thoughts in a specific area, we don't leave that at the door. And people run businesses. So this is equally relevant from a
Yeah.
marketing perspective.
It would be amazing if we could leave our emotions at the
I'm
door.
sure
If we
lots of
had the
people would choose
power
that.
to do that, that would be really interesting. But we don't. You know, we have a lot of power around how we regulate our emotions. We have a lot of power around how we express our emotions in different contexts, what we choose to keep within ourselves and what we choose to share outwardly. But emotions, they happen. I mean, that's like saying, don't have an adrenaline rush when the car in front of you slams on their brakes and you almost rear end them. Like, your body
I
is
don't
going to
control.
react whether you want it to or not. And guess what? There's even some research that if that happens to you, guess it's going to affect your decision making throughout the day and actually make you if I let me see, less likely to take risky choices because you had a scary experience in the morning. Psychologists love to test all kinds of weird stuff about behavior. And these are like decision making is one of the areas in which psychologists like to study all kinds of cool things, right? And so some of it is how our emotions affect our decision making. And I have two thoughts as you said that. One is like marketing. I mean, I'm not a marketing professional, but I would think the best marketing appeals to our emotions. Uh, and so oftentimes in ways that we don't even recognize that it has actually tugged on our emotions. I think if you've created an amazing like marketing piece, it's motivating people's actions and affecting their emotions without them even knowing that you've purposefully done so. Sounds a little nefarious when I say it that way, but like that's the
But it's
point, right? You
also,
want
yeah,
to attract people without them feeling like, oh, I've just been marketed to.
right. And it's certain people. It's nothing that anybody does from a marketing perspective ever has that kind of resonance with all people, right? It's
Yeah.
there are people in a moment, like somebody who had a close encounter with an accident this morning might respond to your marketing differently this afternoon than someone else, pro or for, depending on if you are somebody who's trying to sell automobile insurance and that person doesn't happen to have insurance, then yeah, it speaks one way to them. If it's not, then you're just like, oh, people might scroll on by. And these
Mhm.
are the things that as marketers we don't control, right? I don't control that experience that you're having up there, but I know that
Yeah.
people are having these types of experiences. And so if the business that I have solves this type of problem, then it's only going to speak to somebody who's had this experience anyway. I always
Yeah.
I think very fondly of the Super Bowl ad. I think it was for Volkswagen. Back when like auto starters were the new thing. Again, dating myself. But it was this kid dressed up as Darth Vader, and he was trying to use the Force on a bunch of
Ah.
things and being disappointed, right? And then he tries to use the Force on the car, and the car starts, and he's like, oh! And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I happen to be a Star Wars fan. And at that point in time when that ad was out, I wasn't a parent. So it didn't even speak to me from a parenting perspective, but it spoke to me from a like, wow, what an amazing experience to be able to create for a kid within a theme that I am a fan of. Like, this would be
Mhm.
great. One day when I'm a mom, I'm going to do that for my kid. Right.
Mhm.
And that ad did not resonate the same way with all people. There are
Yeah.
lots of people who saw that ad and have no recollection of ever seeing it. You might be one. You might be listening right now and be like, I don't know what you're
I
talking about.
remember it.
That's because it didn't speak to you. And there's lots of
Yeah.
ads I've seen that resonate with other people that I have no idea I've seen because they're just in the blur of the background
Yeah.
for me because it wasn't relevant. And this is where the psychology plays into it because that's something we can even either create an intention around or it's something that we can ignore to our detriment.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think, look, oftentimes, I don't know how, because I have a question for you, which is, I would like to know how you would describe marketing to me as a psychologist, as a non-marketing professional, as a psychologist. What's the most important thing I should know when I think about marketing and marketing professionals that maybe I don't because I'm not walking in your shoes?
Well, I have a very simplistic point of view. But to me, marketing is about showing people what you have. That's it. There are people who need what you have, there's people who want what you have, and there's other people. But marketing as an activity is being able to showcase that and to help people who have. Here's maybe where I differ in my definition of marketing is I do not believe in convincing people to buy something or persuading people to buy
Mhm.
something. I believe that people out there have a need and or a want for a solution in a specific area. My job as a marketer is to show people that thing, that thing that solves their
Mhm.
problems. I don't convince you to have a problem. I'm just here to show you I have a solution to that problem. You decide if you have that problem, and I will help you create alignment between your problem and my solution.
Mhm.
And that's it. From
Yeah.
and now there's a billion different ways to do that, a billion different combinations of efforts that can go into making that happen. Some of them are in person, some of them are digital, some of them are other pieces of the puzzle that are wouldn't even be considered marketing, like product development and things like that. There's all of these things that exist from your brand. And if
Mhm.
a lot of people consider that brand lives under marketing, but brand is like an entire company experience. It's not owned by marketing. It might be represented by marketing, but it is owned by the entire organization. And so a brand experience
Mhm.
happens at lots of different interaction points within a brand.
Yeah.
Marketing is only one of them. And
Right.
so as marketing, I can't, as a marketer, I can't be fully responsible for
Yeah.
the entire brand
Yeah,
experience
I
because
mean,
I don't
customer
control.
service, for example, is one of the biggest brand experiences that most of us have with a lot of different brands out there, right? If I
Right.
You can do all the amazing stuff in the world, make me feel all warm and tingly inside, but if when I call your customer service hotline or jump on your chat or whatever, if it doesn't help me solve that problem, my brand experience is probably not what you would want it to be. I'll give
Yeah.
you an example. So I won't name the supermarket because I don't want to get them in trouble, but small supermarket chain is launching. That's my favorite place to shop. Have a great brand experience with these folks. My husband and I know the employees. We shop there so often, right? They know us by name. Oh, it's like Norm, when we walk in. And they start launching a marketing campaign. They're hitting me through the app, the email campaign, etc. Use our app to pick up groceries. Use our app. Spend $100, get $25 off. Because I'm ignoring these, right? Because I don't really want. I want to go in the store. I'm a weirdo like that. I want to pick out the fruit myself, right?
Mhm.
And so, but $25 off 100. Now that's a good, compelling offer. I'll go for that. I'm not going to order any fruit. There's stuff I need off the shelves. I'm going to order all that stuff, right? So I place my order. Fast forward, I go to pick it up. Person comes out to my car and they're like, sorry, there's some glitch in the system. We didn't get your order. We don't have it ready. Well, can I go pick the stuff myself? They're like, no. We've already charged my card. Can you give me a refund? No. Okay. So here I am at the store, no groceries, have to repay for them all, etc. I end up going through quite a few phone calls, ended up having to find the CEO of the company on social media in order to get my refund. That was a terrible brand experience, right? that really led from a successful marketing campaign.
Which is the danger, the danger of marketing, promoting an experience that doesn't exist further down the funnel. And this is the thing, we put so much pressure on marketers to like get results and get leads and do the things. And at the end of the day, okay, sure, maybe you got one transaction because of my program, but you guys had so much other stuff broken down the rest of the funnel that you will not get another transaction. And now you've actually broken what I built. So we as a team built something and then broke it within
They broke
ourselves.
it.
And
Yeah.
this is the
Took
challenge
almost
when
a
we
year before we went, or 6 months before we went back to that. It's people were like, "Where have you been?" It's like, I don't wanna go into it. We're back for now, but,
right,
it will never be as happy
the
as it
same.
was, right? You can never unbreak it in a certain way.
Right.
So that's I love that concept that the brand experience is so much bigger than sort of the marketing department, if you will.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, no disrespect to the marketing department. It's just that brand experience comes even in terms of when we talk to other people about their employee experience or in the investor marketplace. There's all kinds of ways in which people can come into contact with your brand,
Yeah.
um, for
Well,
better
and
or
this
for
is the
worse.
thing too, like there's sometimes a first interaction is a digital interaction. Sometimes the first interaction is an in-person. Sometimes it's a referral. Sometimes it's a lady connected earlier with me and was like, "Oh, I was talking to so and so, and they told me that we needed to be connected." And I'm like, "Cool." Right? Because I know that person, I trust them implicitly. So this is probably a good person that I would want to get
Mhm.
into a conversation with. There's like so many opportunities. And from marketing perspective, I think the default response is for people to invest in all of them. Right? Well, there's people who could find us everywhere. So we need to have a website and we need to be on LinkedIn and we need to be on Instagram and we need to be on TikTok and we need to be on whatever new platform is going to exist next year because every 2 years there's a new one. And like pretty soon you are everywhere, quote unquote, but nowhere because you're not
Mhm.
actually in any of those places creating a brand experience that matters. And if you're
Mhm.
in all of these places creating a brand experience that doesn't matter, it doesn't matter that you're in all of those places.
Yeah.
And then we start to look at, like, if we go back to some of that psychology conversation we were having and think about the marketers, people who are creating marketing, who are having these experiences, I've seen far too many marketing coordinators who have 8 to 10 hours of work that they have to do every day, but they can tell that it's having no impact on the
Yeah. Oh,
organization. Doesn't drive
yeah.
sales. We're not creating marketing qualified leads. We're not doing anything. We're just spending money and spending time and not doing anything. And
And then you
I
wonder
mean,
why the employee's a little burned out and
right,
unhappy and goes home at the end of the day like,
right.
that wasn't what I was hoping for when I studied something that I was passionate about and had to go do it. I'm just
And
being
then
ground
you have
down.
employees coming in the next day in that mindset, right? Like, well, I'm not really going to do anything today, so might as well
Yeah.
mail it in again. And then your marketing campaigns don't work. Shocking, because no effort actually went into them, no
Yeah.
passion, no desire, no intention went into them. They're just done so that we can say we hit our KPIs in this arena. Good
Yep.
job, team. We posted 4 blog
Yay.
posts this month that nobody read except internal employees, right? Like it
Right.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And
But
I
you're
think
checking the boxes.
right. It kind of comes back to my like our conversation at the beginning about failure and fear is that if we're so afraid to fail, then we actually can't succeed. Because now we
Mhm.
start to do all these just mailing it in activities. And I'm going to say, yep,
Yep.
great. I'm going to specifically configure my KPIs so that I look like I'm accomplishing something here. Like,
Mhm.
is that the point though? Or is the point to
No.
actually accomplish something? And for
Right.
me, like I'm a solopreneur, right? I hang out with a lot of solopreneurs, right? We are a one person show how much time do you have to waste on marketing things that don't deliver results for you? You
Right.
don't. I don't. I don't
Right.
have time
And
for
the
that.
same is true for most smaller businesses, right? Which is where I tend to hang out. And for those businesses, when I work with those top leaders, um, they really want to maximize all of their people. They can't afford not to. If they know that they have a marketing coordinator who's feeling that way, they want to know about it. Can't speak about corporations because that's not my playground. But if you're talking about a company with 30 to 50 employees and a couple of them are feeling like, well, I'm just a salary that's having no value to the company, they want to know that, and they need to they want to figure out how to be better. That's why I love working with those companies, because their marketing dollars, every one of them is incredibly valuable to them. And understanding where to put them and how to apply them can be more complex than corporate America, I think, because the budgets are smaller and have a bigger impact, overall on the success of the business, right? A
Mhm.
good or bad marketing campaign can make a huge difference to a 30-person company in a way that is probably not going to make for a 30,000-person company. So there's just some scalability differences with those companies, and down to the solo entrepreneur, where it's like every minute of every day is incredibly precious.
Right.
And one of the groups of people that I also work with is other consulting psychologists, right? Other psychologists who are doing what's called applied psychology. We are out in the world, and maybe we're not doing clinical work of therapy, but we're out in the world using our skills to help in organizations, whether it's coaching or strategy or psychological safety in the workplace or teaming or whatever it is we're out there doing. We bring all like we have this amazing thing to offer. A lot of psychologists out there in the marketplace have this amazing product, skills, services, things like we can solve problems. But you know what? On the whole, most of us are not great at marketing, right? It is
Well,
not part of most of our PhD programs. It is
and this
not
is
part of our
true.
honor.
But it's also like why I get so frustrated with what a lot of people consider to be marketing, because they go into this and they're like, well, I'm not, the number of clients I have who've told me they're not good at marketing is just like
Yeah.
annoying
That's why I
because
asked the question, because I'm like, I want to know. I need this, Tracy.
what we think about from a marketing perspective is the things that we see from a marketing perspective. So what do we see? We see graphic design, we see advertising, we see big money spends, right? We see fancy produced TV ads. So our brains start to think that that is marketing, and we get this really closed view of what marketing can be. And when we can step back and ask ourselves the question, okay, well, this is just about me saying I can come and solve problems for a business. Okay, there's businesses that have problems, no doubt about that, right? Like, what
Mhm.
type of problems do you love? What type of people do you love to solve them for? And one of the things that I love, I do it quite often. Actually, I call it an audio experience on my website called the Personal Brand Meditation. And it is about just like sitting and asking yourselves questions. And I have the nice yoga music and everything behind it so that you can envision what a space full of your people feels like. And the point of the exercise is so when I can tap into that, I can visualize what it feels like to be around my people, solving their problems, doing it my way, right? Like, not every business psychologist is made the same, right? There's a way that Dr. Shannon does it, and there's a way that Tracy does marketing that's different from my other marketing peeps. And when I can tap into personally that feeling of what it feels like to be in that space, regardless of what that space feels like, you define that. You can create that for people. So if you are going to a trade show, you can create that kind of experience at a
Mhm.
booth. If you are existing in the digital space, you can create that. You can create that experience on a LinkedIn Live, or you can create that experience on your LinkedIn profile. There's no limit to the spaces where you can create that. But we get so caught up in all those things that it feels like we can't do that. These ad managers, they have 6 years of experience making ads. And I start, they're like, folks,
Mhm.
6 years of experience isn't that much experience. So I'm just saying. But they have more experience than me. So it's fair, right? Like I don't have 6 years of experience creating digital ads. That's not what I do. So I don't, to do what I do, I don't need 6 years of experience. And so sure, it's one thing if you've decided like, yes, ads is the way I want to go, and this is why, because I feel like ads are aligned with me and they feel like a way that I would promote this offering that I have. Great. Find an awesome ads manager, partner with them, let them do the technical work, right? And you get to do what I call the creative piece of that, which is the creating, right? You create the experience. And if you are a solopreneur, you are the experience, my friends. There is no one else that is the experience. You decide. So if you want to give people I've said this a lot of times on this show, but I have a friend who called me a tornado of creation once. And I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what I am. This is what I need people to know about me, because if I come in as a marketing advisor for your organization, I'm going to stir shit up. That's why I'm here, right? If you were super happy with the way your marketing program was going, you wouldn't need a tornado of creation. Okay. But this is what it feels like to be around a tornado of creation. If you don't like that, then there's lots of other people I can introduce
Absolutely. I love that. I love that, by the way, the tornado creation. That's, yeah, it's better than coming in like a wrecking ball.
Right? Yeah, Miley owned that one. But like when you have awesome peeps who will give you like their real experience of you, and you can be like, oh my God, yes, that's exactly who I am. But to the degree where you can own that and then turn it into an experience for people, that is where the power exists from a marketing perspective. So whether you're an individual person or you're a group of people, you are a brand who are trying to create this experience for people, what type of experience do you want to create? The psychology tells you that people who have a strong positive feeling associated with something that you do, it builds a connection. And
Well, and
people
I
don't build
love your
those kinds of
meditations.
connections. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I first
Anybody
of all,
else
I
who
haven't
wants
seen
it
it
too?
yet.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go check it out, and I will probably be sharing it because I love that concept. First of all, right, putting it into the music and the meditation and the relaxing state is going to be something that will open us up to possibility in a way that maybe sitting at a whiteboard or with the computer screen in front of us is not going to. That you're tapping into what would it feel like, what would be around me. It's very similar to like an appreciative inquiry process that I might use if I'm going in. So I'm a weirdo when I do strategy. I don't necessarily come in the same way. I start with a big framing question that's usually appreciative in nature. That's really similar. Like, what would it look like? What would it feel like if we were best in the world at X? Or, what would it look like if our employees were waking up Monday morning excited to come into work and everybody's, walking through the door, grabbing their coffee. Woo, let's go. What would you see? What would be happening in the break room? Where would people be sitting? What would they be talking to? What would they be doing? Um, I love that kind of concept because, again, we just know that it creates that inductive thinking, right? That allows us to think, we can always go smaller. Going smaller is, for most of us, the easier part, right? But going bigger, going bolder, and really tapping into visualizing. And that's the other piece I love about it. You're getting into the emotion and you're creating a visual and physical experience. Like you're tapping into all the things. And so that's a great. I'm sad that didn't check it out before we did this, Tracy. Now I got to get off this so I can go do the meditation.
I need to promote it more actively, is what a lot of people have told me. And if I come and do workshops, then I always do it as part of a workshop. But like, these are the things, right? And this is why I love the intersection of marketing and business psychology, is that this is an activity in being, right? Who are we being? And this is also one of the reasons why I like working with businesses, is because there is more complexity that exists when there's multiple people here that are creating this brand experience than just one person. Right? One person creating a brand experience, it's easy. Well, I mean, there's lots of complexity again, but like conceptually, it's easy because I'm only dealing with one person's authenticity. So as soon as that one person taps into their authenticity, we are good to go, right? Good to go forever. When we are looking at a team, you have team members revolving in and out. You have an overarching brand that you want to keep like pretty consistent, because if it's been in the market for 10, 15 years, you don't want to necessarily be going like all gangbusters and changing everything. But there's new people and there's new perspectives, and how do they share that, and how do they connect with the brand, and how do we let them share that with the world? And just start looking at some of these handcuffs that we've put on ourselves to say, like, this is marketing. It's so funny that you asked me this, actually, Dr. Shannon, because like when I first became an entrepreneur, my whole gig was simplify your marketing. That was like the thing I talked about. So it's all just about simplifying your marketing. And the very first exercise I would do with people is define what marketing is for you. So you look at what marketing is, and most of the time you've created unnecessary limitations to what your brain will accept as marketing. And so you only do what's in your box. But if you look at that and then be like, oh, well, that's just some of the things, and maybe those aren't even marketing things. They've just like things I've picked up over the years. And you crumple up the paper and you throw it away. You're like, nope, okay. Marketing is about connecting people with a solution that I have to a problem that they have. How would I do that? How would I do that? Would I do that through? I have a friend who like solely does that through coffee chats, right? Just coffee chats, in-person coffee chats. That's it, because that's what she likes to do. That's great. Go to town, right? It can work for you. Some people, I like LinkedIn live shows. This is why I do what I do. There's some people who like going to trade shows. There's people who like going. This may seem weird, but there are still people who like cold calling people, that they have fun doing that. I don't know. That is the thing I don't understand, but that's not the point. It's not my way. I don't have to
thrill seekers, I guess. What am I going to get?
And if you like it, then do that. And that's the exploration piece of it, right? Like, what are you trying? Try things until you're like, yes, this is the thing that I can get behind. I can get behind doing it like once a week. I had a conversation with a client earlier today who has a monthly show, and they're like, this was so easy and fun. We can do this weekly, right? Yeah, you can, because it doesn't feel like work, and you can see how it's doing something. Right? You can see the outputs that it's getting you from putting in the input. And it doesn't even have to cost a lot of money. Sometimes it has to cost money, but it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. When you're a solopreneur and your blinders are on, or even if you're a business, honestly, and your blinders are on for advertising, advertising is one of the most expensive marketing mechanisms that you can use. And big companies like Apple and Disney and Coca-Cola use it because they have a lot of money that they can do. They can play with stuff, right? And that's fine. You'll, if you want to, you'll get there eventually. But that's not where anybody begins. That is not where the first can of Coke was sold, through a digital advertisement, right? And I think sometimes it's important to
And even those brands can get it wrong, make an error, offend people, have a marketing campaign that goes in the wrong direction. Right?
I had a
Even with all that
conversation
money,
last
all
week,
that expertise.
with a Apple fan. I personally am not an Apple user, even though I think historically their branding has been. He's like, they just changed all their commercials to start talking about features and stuff, and like, I'm not an Apple user because of that. I'm part of the innovation community. That's why I'm here, right? And you're like, this is the interesting thing, because if we're not watching why people are following our brand and why people are choosing us, we might assume, especially from a technology perspective, folks, if you're working in a technology company, a lot of times we incorrectly assume people choose us because of a feature. Actually, I think that a lot of consultants and coaches think this too. And it is a feature, but the feature is your personal brand. Right? And how you show up and how you treat people and how you help people, your style of doing that. It's not about whether or not you get X amount of calls a week, or you get a private community where you can ask me questions 24 hours a day. Just no one, it's fine, right? If you want to give them those details, that it's okay. But no one's probably going to buy the newest Apple phone if it has like a way worse camera than something else. But so long as it's competitive, I'm not buying it for the camera. I'm buying it for the club. I want to be in the Apple club, right? And we forget that.
Right.
That's
We
another
forget.
brand
Well,
experience.
and that's the group behavior piece of it that we didn't even get into, and how
We might
people
have to do a
follow each
follow-up
other,
episode.
and oh, that's a whole other thing. I will just kind of say this as I was hearing you talk. What it made me think about is it's interesting that so I'm somebody who started as a clinician and transitioned into coaching and consulting and organizational work. And it just struck me as interesting. When you're a clinician, when you're doing therapy, you tend to not do a lot of marketing, but you do make it obvious to people what problems you solve. I help with depression. I help with your bad marriage. I help with we all do different things, right? We're not all generalists in terms of being clinicians, right? We tend to focus in on certain ones that we think we are good at. We have the tools, experience, whatever it is. So when we market, whether that's putting something up out in there in an ad or a website or whatever, or just talking to our peers, which it is mostly, letting other doctors and folks know here's what I do. I specialize in, like, early in my career, it was divorce. I specialized in high conflict divorce and custody cases. If you guys are fighting over who's going to get the kids for the weekend, if you're pissed off that the other parent got your kid's haircut without asking you, I'm probably the best therapist that you can come to in this market to help you guys solve those problems. That's what I help. I don't solve it for you. I help you solve it for yourself, but I give you the tools and bring you the space to do so. And that's how we think as clinicians a lot of the times, is in terms of the problem that we solve. I think it's kind of interesting, and I'm going to have to spend some time thinking on maybe how we maybe don't take as much of that approach into the consulting world, right? As consulting psychologists, we tend to shift more over to the features side of it, or here's the product I have to offer, and lose, not all of us, I would just speak for myself, maybe I've lost touch with some of that sense of, there's some really sticky problems that I am uniquely positioned to be able to help you solve. And I might not be able to put them out into a blurb that makes sense because they're the sticky ones that don't come up all the time with everybody else. They're the unique, icky, sticky, yucky things that you need to figure out. That's what I'm here for.
Even
And
that,
it's
like, I need to just take a moment and like reiterate that, because even the definition, like the words you just used, were things that are sticky, right?
Yeah.
And then that's your words. That not everyone is using those words. Not everyone listening is like, well, I don't know, what is sticky? But some people are going to be like, oh my God, I have such a sticky problem. I need Dr. Shannon. This is the point, right? Where we can tap into that authenticity to the point where we use our own words and we don't. Again, I'm not going to go on a rant about this because we are already at time, but like the industry wants to try and make this, and by the industry, I mean the marketing industry, wants to simplify everything to the point, but in the wrong direction, right? So the simplification is coming in. Let's all use I help statements to tell people what it is that we do. And then we all sound the same. And then guess what? We don't stand out in a crowded marketplace because we all sound the same. That's not good marketing advice. That's terrible marketing advice. But when you use words like sticky and you have people around you who can help point out to you, like, okay, you are saying that, but no one else is saying that. There's people talking about difficult problems. There's people talking about wicked problems. You're talking about sticky problems. That attracts people who experience their problem as sticky, right? This problem that I have that won't go away. It's like Pooh Bear in the honey pot, and you like can't get his hand out, right?
That's exactly one of the images I would have. And he's like tracking honey all around,
Right? And now everything is sticky, and you're like, oh my God, what did I even do? And now I don't know how to get unstuck. And that's who I need to go see, because she is the queen at sticky problems. This is just, I mean, I could talk about this for a long time, but when we hear that advice, that it just seems like it's pushing you all in the same direction, right? You need to all do the same thing. That's a hard no from a marketing perspective. When we get to the point where we are all doing the same thing, that's communism. And that will be a different government. I'm in Canada, so it's not a thing, right? Like we're not being dictated that, but we're allowing ourselves to be swayed in that direction, which is allowing ourselves to be pulled farther and farther away from our authentic self. So when we have those opportunities to come back to it and say, no, this is me. This is how I would do it. This is how we would do it. Super powerful from a team perspective too, folks. This is how we do it. And we go to market and we show people that this is how we do it. This is how we solve this fintech problem. This is how we manufacture shoes. This is how we think you should build a digital enterprise, right? Like, there are going to be people who agree with you. There's people right now who are thinking that the I help statement is the most magical thing and they wouldn't have a business without it. And that's fine. That's just not my people, right? My message is not going to resonate with those people. But I can't pretend to be that because I don't believe that that's true. But that doesn't mean that that person is wrong. It means that we're in two different groups. And if I can be authentic and you can be authentic, then hey, we've just reached the fastest path for us to find each other. Now, challenge in marketing is most consumers don't know what their authentic self is, and then there's a whole other area of complexity there. But you can start with yourself and allow that to be shown to the world. And psychologically, from a creator perspective, it's the easiest thing to do. Okay. I have a call that started 7 minutes ago. I'm going to wrap up this call to get
we definitely have to wrap up. That's why I'm resisting the urge to speak. And it's hard.
But we can keep talking about this for a long time. And I think, Dr. Shannon, if you're open to it, we should definitely have you back because I think there is a really marketing to me is about community. So now you're talking about the group dynamics. And I think it would be really beneficial to have another episode, if you're open to it, on the group dynamics from a business psychology perspective, because that's really what our greatest goal here is to create a one-to-many relationship in marketing. So I would love to have you back. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wonderful insights with us today.
Thank you for having me. This has been so much fun. I love talking with you. And like you said, we could keep going, but we'll, out of respect for your other call,
I can tell him he was booked right after my live, and I was likely going to be late because I'm always late. So at least his expectations have been managed in that arena. Thank you to Andrew and Alexandra and Sarah joined us as well. Thank you guys so much for getting into the conversation today. And as a reminder, if trying to avoid crazy, stupid marketing or something along the lines of business psychology is the conversations that you are interested in being in right now, please don't let this be the last conversation that you are in. Every conversation is an ongoing adventure. There is more to learn. There is more to explore. So make sure you stay in the conversation if this is something that's important to you. So either connect with me, connect with Dr. Shannon, connect with each other in the chats, and let's see a world with less crazy, stupid marketing and some more solid foundational psychology behind our marketing. All right, Dr. Shannon, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone else, for watching today.
Thank you.
Permission to do you.